morning. It is Tuesday, November 11, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, 2 terror attacks in one day. A Palestinian man stabs a woman to death and injures 2 more people at a hitchhiking post outside Alon Shvut settlement in the West Bank, only hours after an IDF soldier was stabbed and later died in Tel Aviv. Ramallah commemorates Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, who died a decade ago. And later on the show, Robert O'Neill, the Navy SEAL who killed bin Laden, will soon reveal the arch-terrorist's final moments in a special Fox documentary. We'll take a closer look. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi. We begin with the double terror attack in Israel over the past 24 hours. A very bloody day yesterday. A 26-year-old woman was killed in a stabbing attack in the West Bank settlement of Alon Shvut. The attack came only hours after an IDF soldier was stabbed and first critically wounded, later died, in a Tel Aviv train station. The first incident in which a Palestinian stabbed and critically wounded the soldier in Tel Aviv brought bloodshed to the Israeli commercial capital that has largely been spared since the Palestinian revolt ended in 2005. The Islamic Jihad organization claimed responsibility for both stabbing attacks. Let's take a look at the following report and break it down from there.
Tensions are soaring as Israel sees one of its most violent days, with 2 terror attacks just hours apart, as the country's security forces and citizens go on high alert. Earlier today in Tel Aviv, a 20-year-old Israeli soldier was critically wounded and died later. Israeli police have confirmed the incident was nationalistically motivated, making it the first of a string of terror attacks to hit Tel Aviv. The stabber has been identified as an 18-year-old resident of the West Bank city of Nablus. He was neutralized by a passerby and was later taken into custody by police. Later in the day, a Palestinian stabbed 3 people in the Alon Shvut junction in the West Bank. A 25-year-old woman who was hurt succumbed to her wounds just earlier. 2 other people, a 50-year-old and a 26-year-old, are considered seriously and lightly injured. The terrorist was then shot by a security guard who was at the scene and is currently being treated for serious wounds in Jerusalem's Hadassah hospital. The Palestinian driver, who is a released prisoner from Hebron and allegedly has links with Hamas, first tried to run over pedestrians, but then exited his car and attacked them with a dagger. Meanwhile, protests continue to take place across Israel, despite a vow by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to put an end to continued rioting. The recent outbreak comes in the wake of last Friday night's controversial shooting of a Kfar Kana man by police. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke out against the rioters, warning that Israel will impose new legislations to deter them. But what will be done about this latest string of attacks is another question altogether.
First joined on the phone by Chief Inspector for the Israeli Police, Foreign Press spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld. Mickey, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Firstly, yesterday, can you please, do we know exactly what happened in Alon Shvut and what are the precautions being taken care in and around Israel this morning, because it seems to be happening everywhere?
What we know from the terrorist attack that took place yesterday evening in the Alon Shvut area, security guard that was near the adjacent area shot and killed the suspect, and that's unfortunately after 3 people were injured at the scene when he plowed his vehicle into the bus stop. Since then, we've heightened security and carried out security measures in and around the Judean Samaria area, including roadblocks and coordination with the IDF. That will continue as long as necessary. And we're also examining yesterday's terrorist attack that took place in Tel Aviv, where unfortunately the soldier passed away as well. Very serious incidents that have taken place. We're also calling on members of the public, as long as necessary, if they see anyone who looks suspicious, any suspicious vehicles, not to hesitate and call the Israeli police. And we're also stepped up intelligence circles in order to try and find potential suspects and reach them before there'll be any further attacks.
And speaking of Tel Aviv, any extra security, forces being deployed anywhere in and around that, what we call the commercial capital of Israel?
Well, there'll be extra police units around public areas, including train stations, bus stops, malls, and that will continue at least for the next 24 to 48 hours. We're hoping that the situation will gradually get back to normal, at least in terms of the terrorist level. At the same time, the Israeli police are also dealing with other issues which are within the Israeli Arab communities and the tensions that have been felt there as well, with extra units deployed also in the north, special police units that are capable of dealing with disturbances and riots. and we want to calm the situation down there as well.
Okay, Miki Rosenfeld, thank you for joining us this morning from Jerusalem. And we are joined in studio by Haaretz senior defense correspondent Amir Oren. Amir, good morning to you. And also from Gush Etzion, from actually the West Bank, we are joined by Tal Shalev, who is in Gush Etzion, where the attack yesterday, the second attack, took place. Tal, to start off with you, both these attacks, the Israeli government yesterday, Netanyahu, did he call for a special cabinet meeting? Anything coming out of government meetings in terms of how to deal with what seems to be a third intifada?
Well, good morning, Yael. You know, many in Israel mark actually this hitchhiking station behind me as the mark, or maybe the beginning, what marks the beginning of this whole security deterioration, trying to put a date on when it all started. Then many put it back to June, when half a year ago, when the three Israeli teenagers, Naftali Frenkel, Gilad Shahar, and Eyal Ifrach, were kidnapped and later on murdered from this hitchhiking station behind me. And yesterday, Dalia Lemkos, in her 20s, from Tkoa, was also stabbed and killed to death. And Lemkos is the 11th victim in that past half year, and the 6th one in just the past month. So this is definitely a grave security situation facing Netanyahu these days. And up until now, he hasn't really convened a special security cabinet meeting, but rather is choosing to use a special security consultation forum with the defense minister, with the interior, public interior security minister, and the IDF chief of staff, the Shin Bet chief of staff, and of course the police. Yesterday, he does hold another consultation like this in this forum. At the end of it, he actually releases quite a laconic statement, one that you cannot learn a lot from. He says he orders to reinforce security forces in the region, in the West Bank, and in Jerusalem, and in the cities, something that is definitely evident and apparent this morning. You can see a lot of heavy security presence here in the region. And he also orders to continue to severe the punishment against terrorists and whoever is attached to terrorists, and primarily the very controversial step of demolishing homes of families of terrorists.
Okay, Tal Shalev joining us from the West Bank. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We'll be covering, obviously, the situation throughout the day for I-24 News. Amir Oren with me in studio. It's a senior defense analyst. You know, I'm going to ask this irrespective of of how much time we have. Is this a third intifada?
What is the making of an intifada?
A daily uprising, a daily revolt, I'm wondering out loud with you, because it seems like this has not been contained. Yeah.
We found out the meaning of this term intifada in 1987, when there was what seemed a spontaneous popular uprising, not with bullets or bombs, but with stones and with crowds attacking police and military units. This is not what happened in the 2000 plus
in the second intifada, so to speak,
when it was organized from the top down. What we have now is something in the middle. What you call the second intifada was, to my mind, not an intifada at all. It was a coordinated terror wave. This is right now the second intifada, at least its start, because it does not seem to be coordinated. It is inspired, but not conspired.
Right.
And what we have are homemade, makeshift weapons, individuals who are inspired, who are guided by some spiritual authority, or who decide on the spur of the moment to go and kill an Israeli. These are terrorist attacks, these are murders, but this is not a terror wave coordinated by Abu Mazen and his security service, who are trying to block it.
We're trying to block it, so some will argue that, but we're looking at the latest two attacks that that have been recalled and responsible for the Islamic Jihad released the following statement. Let's take a look. Overnight.
Islamic Jihad praises these heroic operations. We consider it a normal reaction in the name of the Palestinian people against the Israeli crimes in Al-Aqsa Mosque, against our people in Jerusalem. These acts are a normal response to the last crime of execution of Khair al-Din al-Hamdan from Kafar Kana in the occupied lands of 1948.
I mean, this is the Islamic Jihad praising,
yes,
actually.
they're taking retroactively.
Right,
They're
not
trying
claiming
to
responsibility.
take ownership.
Yeah.
But had it been true that this was organized by some group, such as the Islamic Jihad,
right,
then Israeli intelligence was supposed to find out about it.
No, and exactly. I'm going to rephrase that because I think this is being purported, it's being said in many organizations that the Islamic Jihad takes responsibility. It is not, and that's a good point. This is them saying we praise it, just as Hamas praised the attacks in Jerusalem. And I'm asking, is this some kind of modus operandi where the Palestinians are beginning to, because these are individuals that are doing this on their own, supposedly. What kind of political capital can the Palestinian organization gain from it, and how can this even be combated by the Israeli army? I mean, by the security forces. How do you fight this?
You can't really fight it unless you have a political horizon. And this is what the security and intelligence community has been telling the political echelon in Israel for a long time, but there is a disconnect between the professionals who look ahead and know that it is futile to try and deal with it by force alone, and the politicians who have their own agendas.
Entirely so. Amir Owen, thank you for being with us on this one. As we said, 2 terror attacks in Israel over the course of the last 24 hours. And what seems to be a trickling effect of, we're not going to call it an uprising, but rather trickling effect of Palestinian individuals attacking Israeli civilians. And stay with us for the next segment. For decades, Yasser Arafat was the incarnation of the Palestinian fight for independence. 10 years after his death, he remains a national hero for still stateless people. And when he died on November 11th, 2004, the Palestinian people mourned him as if they lost a father. And although Mahmoud Abbas took over as head of both the PLO and the Palestinian Authority and leader of the Fatah movement, such organizations are much less imposing under Abbas as they used to be under Yasser Arafat. Now, for most Israelis, Yasser Arafat and his trademark black and white keffiyeh represented the embodiment of the arch-terrorist, their biggest foe. A handful of people, though, in the Israeli society believed that he was the only one who could impose peace or permanent settlement with Israel for his people. So, a decade on in the West Bank, his death, which was also very controversial, is commemorated today. For that reason, we are joined in studio by, later on, by former Palestinian Minister Ashraf al-Ajami, who will be joining us in studio, and by the President of the Israeli National Committee, Major General Alon Shvut, on reserve. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, before we break this down, let's take a look at Gabi Tartakovsky's piece about Yasser Arafat, the man, the leader, and the legacy he left behind.
Throughout his life, Yasser Arafat, the founder of the Fatah movement and the chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, embodied Palestinian resistance and statehood aspirations and remained a controversial figure until his death in 2004. Based in Tunis, Arafat planned countless terror attacks against Israel and survived an assassination attempt by the Israeli Air Force in 1985. Following the 93 Oslo Accords, Arafat was named the first president of the newly formed Palestinian Authority. Arafat further solidified himself as a legitimate leader in 1994, upon receiving the Nobel Peace Prize alongside his Israeli counterparts. Arafat was still perceived as an untrusted arch-nemesis by many Israelis and was criticized by Palestinians for being a corrupt leader. However, he remained vital in all major peace negotiations in the 1990s. Few images illustrate the collapse of the peace talks as vividly as his reluctant entrance into the Camp David boarding house in July 2000. By the second Palestinian uprising, Arafat was deemed as irrelevant by various Israeli leaders.
Arafat is no partner. He is a ruthless enemy.
Yasser Arafat cannot be considered as a partner, and he does not fulfill his leadership duties. He brings disaster to the Palestinian people and causes bloodshed on our side.
Once his losing grip over the Palestinian Authority was fatal enough, IDF forces heavily targeted Arafat's presidential compound in Ramallah. Arafat's firm message barely masked his fragile appearance.
These people are brave, steadfast against this racism, this terrorism, and this aggression which is being committed with all these American weapons. I say to these people, we are together until one of our roses raises the Palestinian flag over the walls of Jerusalem.
Israel authorized to transport the Il Arafat to a French hospital, where he was pronounced dead on November 11, 2004. 40 days of mourning were declared in the Palestinian Authority and refugee camps in Lebanon. A decade after his passing, Arafat is still an icon, although his legacy is now threatened by Hamas's prevailing status in Gaza.
We're joined in studio by the president of the Israel National Committee, Major General on Reserve, Alon Shvut. Good morning to you, and of course, Amir Alon with us. Mr. Shvut, I'm just wondering out loud with you. People do say today, several people in the Israeli society, that Yasser Arafat was the only leader of the Palestinian society that could have imposed peace or led to a settlement with the Israelis and sell it to the Palestinian people. Do you think that was the case?
Yes, it's a long time ago, but I think Arafat at that time was a man that could sell the goods to the streets, to the Palestinians in the street, and they respect him. And that was the way that they respect him. They listened to him, and because he was with uniform and with the kafia and all the manners, he could sell this story, and he tried to change his manners at that time. Also, it was very difficult even to shake his hand at that time. And I think late Rabin understood it. It was very difficult even to late Rabin to accept it. But after the story of the Syrian trying to make peace in the north, we start to negotiate, and at that time I was the head of the negotiation with the Palestinians, and we start to create another ground. And if you are talking the story of Oslo created by other people, not military people, but at that time Rabin brought the military people and even brought me to be the head of the coordinator of the territories, the governor of West Bank and Gaza district. And we tried to do it, and I met Arafat many times and negotiate with him. And he acted as a man that it was a little bit actor, trying to make a, I don't know if it's a comedy, but yes. But he negotiated with us, and we tried to create, to change the switch and to do something else. And that was the story at that time, and he could sell it. I met also Abu Ala and Abu Mazen, the two heads that Arafat trying to play with them and sending them in front of him. Yeah. But at the same, not at the same time, but that was the story, and he tried even to create another way. And I think at that time it was truly a way that I think that he believed that he can do something. So
that something can change. And I'm wondering out loud with Amion, because you and I discussed, and we'll be joined on the phone in a minute by Dimitri Diliani, council member of the Fatah Revolutionary Party, and we'll be joined by him in a second. Amion, I want to ask you though, and I think Dimitri can already hear us, that you said that the second Intifada, the 2000 Intifada, was actually, when Arafat was alive, was at power, was head of the Palestinian, of the Palestinian state information, so to speak, in negotiation with Israel, that it was a concerted effort. It was actually an organized terror wave. Do you think that he knew at the time? Because there are those who always argue that Arafat used to say things in English and then different things in Arabic.
Yasser Arafat and the PLO were Israel's third choice regarding the solution of the Palestinian problem. Israel first tried to do it with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan under King Hussein, failed to do it because it didn't offer a good enough compromise, so Hussein withdrew. Then with local Palestinians residing in the territories, but they were vetoed by Arafat, and only then did Rabin take Shimon Peres and his groups offer to deal with Arafat. Now, Arafat was first perceived to be the Palestinian Ben Gurion. This is by Israelis. What is a Ben Gurion? It is a forceful leader who knows how to employ force even against his domestic rivals. And the idea was that, yes, Arafat will get some compromises from Israel, but he will impose his will on Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This did not come to pass.
Did it not come to pass? And with that, yes, Oren?
I want to add to Amir. I think Arafat understood his people until the death of the engineer, what we call the engineer,
Yahya Ayash.
Yahya Ayash was assassinated by the Israeli army.
To do peace, to make peace. And after the meeting in Washington with Rabin, and after the agreements and what we signed and that, he tried to continue and create this Palestinian Authority and tried to behave as the president of the Palestinian Authority and tried to do it. But after the death of Yahya Ayash, not only Arafat, even Dahlan and other people around him, they thought that it was enough. And this way that Yahya Ayash finished his life forced them to do it and to plan, even to join the planning of the terrorist incidents. And it was a few terrorist incidents in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv, with many people with many casualties, and this caused that we changed the way. But it happened to be after the Yitzhak Rabin was killed, and Peres and Shimon Peres,
the leaders that could, the only ones who could do.
And Shimon Peres, it was another story, because even the Palestinians respect Yitzhak Rabin. They call him the lion, and respect him.
Yeah, and then with that, we respected him as a. We can talk about the leadership of a group of people as perceived by their enemies. But I want to turn to Jerusalem right now, to Dimitri Diliani. Dimitri, good morning to you. Member of the council, the Fatah Revolutionary Council party. Obviously, I mean, this is Arafat's death commemorated 10 years on today. And the argument is that, as we've said here in studio, many people will argue in many places that he had the gravitas to, progress peace with Israel that Mahmoud Abbas doesn't have, or that he had the gravitas to also unify the Palestinian people, because, there were ceremonies that were planned today also in Gaza, but Fatah canceled them, I understand, because of security threats, ceremonies to commemorate Arafat. So was he the only one that was able to, do you think, that could unify the Palestinian people?
No, I think he was the only one that was able to transform Fatah and the PLO from armed struggle into a peaceful political process, and introduce non-violent resistance as a method to support the political course. I think that he's not the only one that can carry a peace process, or can take us to a peace process that would end up in a Palestinian state, simply because there's a consensus among the Palestinian people on that, even using non-violent methods or through political course. But the actual transformation that took place starting the mid-'80s and was basically reached its peak in terms of internal feud in November '88, the time that we have recognized the state of Israel for no political return whatsoever, and then moved on through the first Intifada that ended up in the Oslo Agreement. This 10-year period, I believe that none other than Arafat would have been able to take the Palestinian people. But otherwise, the PLO and Fatah is an organization of institutions with clear strategy, with internal democratic processes that is able to make a peace deal. The question is that the difficulties that are faced by Mahmoud Abbas today, by President Abbas today, are not the same as they were
faced at the time. No, that's a very
Yeah.
good point. And for just one second, Mr. Diliani, because we're also joined in studio now by the former Palestinian minister, Ashraf Al-Ajrami. Pardon me for, I'm hoping I pronounced the name right. Thank you for being with us. You knew Arafat. You worked with him, and it's the same question that I'm asking Dimitri Diliani in Jerusalem. Was he the only man to unify the Palestinian people? Because as we mentioned this morning, commemoration ceremonies in Gaza were canceled for security reasons. And Mahmoud Abbas, his successor, in many scenarios, is described as somebody who doesn't have the gravitas that Yasser Arafat had.
I think that Yasser Arafat is unique in the way that he can hold all the Palestinian factions around him. This is something that no Palestinian leader can do like Mr. Arafat. So I think we lost Yasser Arafat, the historical personality that can unify all the Palestinian factions. He also managed to keep them in touch with him even when they opposed his position, like the Palestinian Popular Front and Democratic Front, when they opposed what Arafat said and his attitude against, they was against him, especially the Popular Front in 1974, when Arafat adopted the two-state solution.
And the arguments towards him, towards Arafat, that during the year 2000, that he was actually saying one thing to the Western world and a different thing to his people, that he wasn't really a partner. That's one of the arguments that the Israelis always raise when it comes to Yasser Arafat. Would you say that's correct?
No, I don't think so, because Yasser Arafat managed in the Palestinian area to keep people supporting his attitude. He wants to have a peaceful solution, but at the same time, he doesn't want the opposition faction to be against him. So he dealt with them in a way that there is a window for them to be in, not outside. But unfortunately, the latest two movements, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, were different from many point of view from the other factions, PLO factions. PLO factions, they has a discussion. They had the discussion about the way to have a national state, even based on 1967 borders. But the two other factions, the Islamic factions, didn't adopt the program of PLO, so this is something different.
And which, sadly sometimes continues to this day as well, in many ways. Really quickly?
Yes, in retrospect, yes. Arafat, for the last 10 years of his life, which were the years of the Oslo process, did not lead, but as Obama is now supposed to be doing, led from behind.
Thank you for staying with us. First, the news. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Good morning. Welcome back to I-24 News, November 11th, 2014. We say hello and good morning to Anthony Grant, who joins us daily. Daily.
Good morning to you in this
and a somber morning.
Somber, foggy morning here. I'm going to start right off the bat, of course, with Haaretz's headline, which I'm going to actually hold up here, which talks about the
stabbing incidents, to quote Haaretz.
Right, yesterday, and of course, we know in one in Tel Aviv involving an IDF soldier. So this is something that, of course, is making the front page news all over Israel, and very, very tragic.
Very tragic. The two 2 fatalities, 2 deaths, and I think the hardest thing about the wave of violence that we're seeing, that we were discussing in the first half hour, can one call it an intifada already or not, is that nobody's really taking responsibility when it comes to the organizations, be it Hamas or Islamic Jihad.
You could see
you don't really know how to combat it. It's like lone wolves.
Exactly, and you can see links. There have been incidents, of course, even in the United States, with sort of lone wolf criminal activities, which where the blurring the line between criminal and terrorist. Where do you draw the line? In the meantime, the consequences for those involved are tragic.
Tragic, and the lack of safety, I think, for all around, that you don't really know where it's going to come from and how to even fight it.
And speaking of fighting it, just to back up just a bit from this morning's headline from Ynet, we have an account of the brave bystander who recounts his struggle with the terrorists. This was yesterday in Tel Aviv, and this was a guy in his 50s who was basically noticing the violence going on and literally jumped in to try to save the soldier. It seemed at first that maybe the soldier had a fighting chance. Tragically, he didn't. The wounds were too grave. But again, it reminded me of thinking back to United Airlines Flight 93, way back in 2001, Let's Roll, and civil people doing their part to fend off these basically crazy lone wolves. Again, not successfully, but at least trying, and I think that is something that...
the camaraderie of the civilians,
yes,
definitely.
On Veterans Day in the United States, of course, no less, I salute, of course, this fallen soldier. There's no other way to describe Almag Shalomi. But more in military news, USA Today talks about the Navy SEALs back in the U.S. who were frustrated by the Bin Laden raid disclosures. We'll talk about this more later, of course.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought it in.
This is also a very big deal. Should people kill and tell when it comes to should
yes,
in terms of the special military operation efforts?
I'm yet to hear anybody put it better than you. Should people kill and tell?
Well, according to the Navy SEAls, you shouldn't. You
shouldn't.
Should do your job quietly and then proceed quietly to the next one.
Like every man I dated. Go ahead.
Anyway, so again, speaking of matters military, Politico has an interesting story about Obama and what's going on in Iraq. They say the war over President Obama's new war in Iraq. There's a picture of John Kerry there. And this is, coming on the heels of the dispatching of another 1,500 troops to Iraq, which would seem to be a signal that things are finally getting more organized and cleared up there. But actually, things do seem to be kind of murky. There's coalition partners that are complaining that there is still a lack of a really coherent strategy. Are the airstrikes doing enough?
Them and us. No, I mean, I have to say, them and the press, what is the strategy?
What is the strategy?
The million-dollar question.
The Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, is warning, apparently according to this, that the war strategy is still messy. And his own popularity ratings, Chuck Hagel's, are basically quite low. So there's
even the defense minister is calling the strategy messy.
Then that's a problem.
That is a huge problem.
Yeah, that's something that would demand a rectification.
Yes.
And it plays into what's going on in the ground there. That we had these reports of weekend airstrikes allegedly injuring al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, but we don't know. And I looked at the Iraqi newspaper Al-Amada, which actually has an interesting spin on it. They had an article saying that ISIS posted some condolence pages somewhere online with sort of a diagram of those that were slain, who were apparently ferried by car into pockets of Syria where they have access to. And the article mentions that they basically say, Baghdadi was injured, but they're not saying that he was killed.
Again, the question of the morning, I'm glad you're raising this because we have Brandon Friedman here with us from the Moshe Dayan Center to discuss this in the upcoming segment, because it has been all over the press,
right?
Especially also the American and I think a bulk of the European media looking, has he really been hit?
Right.
And the Pentagon only confirming that they were targeting ISIS.
And the Pentagon also saying the Iraqi media is given to exaggeration, which, I mean, the American media, I guess you're staying with us once in a while could be given to exaggeration too.
We can argue. Yes.
We could. Of course, all the diplomatic activity in China with the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference. Interesting headline here. Xi Jinping of China urging Japan to take a cautious approach on military and security issues after one of the frostiest handshakes in recent diplomatic history. You have
Is that the frosty?
That's That's the frosty handshake.
frosty
Now, you would think those two guys would have a lot in common, right? I mean, they're world leaders, they're in Asia, but it was frosty time.
Yeah, it was like, okay, fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll pose.
Yeah, it was very, very, we talk about this brink of a Cold War with Russia and the rest of the world, but China and Japan, things are pretty, frosty to say the least. So they're, urging caution about strategic issues, military, security, contentious issues, island, territorial disputes. There's a lot of issues between the two countries. A lot of baggage. Let's see. The Telegraph reports London Mayor Boris Johnson says he'd like to be a walrus if he could choose the animal of choice. And, this he's always keeping things interesting. And I saw this headline and thought, you know what? John Lennon was the walrus first.
Yes.
So I don't know.
He could own it. And I don't know if Boris Johnson, I would say, I forgot about him.
This is a way of him coming back into the headlines. Yeah, and he exposes himself to these sorts of, how shall I put it, I don't want to say ridicule, but he's very big on media, like with Twitter, social media, so he has these question and answer sessions. And so the British media is very quick to pick up on anything that is characteristically eccentric to make a news item out of it. Why he chose a walrus, something to do with the tusks, I don't know. La Stampa in Italy reports that Italy has got a doppia doccia gelata, which is a double cold shower, meaning not only is Italy having industrial production fell by 3% from a year ago, but growth forecast for 2015 is zero. Zero. Now, this is really, really not good news for Italy. I mean,
not to make light of it.
Not to make light, but
this is really bad news.
Zero growth.
Is bad.
Zero is bad, and you have at this, the UK is trying to kind of distance itself from the European Union project at the moment.
Very good.
The Greek economy has been on the fritz and apparently is coming back. But is Italy going to be the next country that's going to have these issues?
We were celebrating, say, 25 years to the fall of the Berlin Wall, which 4 years later actually led to the formation of the EU, and as we said.
And a resurgent Germany on many fronts.
Germany's faring beautifully.
Right.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. It's amazingly how well. And then you look at like Italy,
which always worries me when they do better. But
it worries me too, and I'm sure it worries the Italians.
Yes.
The economy cannot get by on.
Tony, thank you for that, and do stay with us for the next segment because I think you'll find it interesting and something to and pitch in.
See ya.
As Tony Grant mentioned, over the course of the last several days, conflicting reports coming from the Iraqi administration say that the leader of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was critically wounded, I'm going to do this, when a U.S.-led airstrike targeted the western Iraqi border town of Al-Qaim. Now, the Pentagon confirmed airstrikes in the area, indeed targeted the leader of the militant group, but cannot confirm that Baghdadi was killed in the airstrike. Now, whether this report is true or not, the question brought up is what a pinpointed attack as such may lead to in the future. To kill a number one terrorist, always a coveted goal, but it may lead to something that is not so coveted at the end of the day. So to further discuss this, we're joined in studio by research fellow at the Moshe Dayan Center in Tel Aviv University, Dr. Brendan Friedman. Dr. Friedman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And we are also joined from Erbil, Iraq, by freelance reporter Hermione G. Hermione, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Oh, great, we can see you. First of all, Hermione, because, even though you are in the predominantly Kurdish area of Iraq, what is being said, what is confirmed, if anything, on the ground about the whereabouts and the possible, injury of al-Baghdadi?
Well, what the Iraqi authorities are saying, the Iraqi Defense Ministry has confirmed, or they are alleging that al-Baghdadi has in fact been injured and has been taken to Syria for treatment. That's what the Iraqi authorities are saying. So that's all we know so far. They are claiming that they're hearing this from sources that they have within the Islamic State group.
Really? Okay. The sources they have within the group, and is how if in the event, and we're all theorizing, but I'd like you to stay with us on that. The reaction on the ground to that, where you're at, I mean, people cheerful. Is this a semi-Western reaction, such as when Bin Laden was killed in the United States? I mean, anybody reacting to it, or does that seem not take that much traction as it does in the Western world?
I think people are wary. I mean, people, because we don't know yet what's happening, people are wary. Also, it's not clear what it would mean. I mean, even if they had been successful in killing him, which presumably was the aim, again, it isn't clear what that would mean. It isn't clear if that would mean, a significant blow to the Islamic State.
Right.
I mean, even without Baghdadi, who I've heard from Peshmerga commanders and from Iraqi security forces who have been, engaged in the fight against the Islamic State, they say that he is a very effective commander, that he is, an enemy to be reckoned with. But they do have, he has two senior aides who are former commanders from within Saddam Hussein's army,
right,
who, have been very successful or very important to the Islamic State takeover of Iraq. So it's not entirely clear how significant it would be. Certainly the military strategy would probably not be harmed enormously, but it's really a question of the leadership, the ability to bring in new recruits and so on, what that would mean if Baghdadi were eliminated. One last thing is it could actually be a negative if he were eliminated. As a self-proclaimed caliph of the caliphate, it could draw more recruits, who are angered at his assassination.
Which is always, I think, a very good point here, Miriam G. And Dr. Friedman, I want to ask you this. This seems to be a modus operandi that always is reminiscent to me of a Hollywood movie. We got him. We're thinking of Saddam Hussein. We got him, that famous line. Osama bin Laden, same thing. Not that those people, not that Osama bin Laden did not need to be, to pay for his sins. But at the end of the day, what does that spell to the organization itself? And does it really help in the battle against, or rather, raise more serpents, so to speak?
I don't think there are any shortcuts to defeating the Islamic State. I think it's important not to underestimate the charismatic authority of Baghdadi, and certainly if he is badly injured or dead, it deals a very serious blow to the Islamic State. But the idea, I think, that you can destroy the Islamic State by destroying their, caliph, to me, is an attempt perhaps to find a shortcut to a serious issue that is both in Iraq and Syria. And so I think this gets back to the point we were discussing earlier about the strategy.
Exactly.
It has to be more than trying to kill Baghdadi. This is a dynamic organization that's demonstrated it can raise funds for itself. It's self-sustaining. It is the first terror organization that I'm aware of that is self-sustaining in terms of its financing. Its ability to create means of exporting oil and managing cities has been somewhat dynamic. And so I think when we talk about, there's a tendency to focus too much on one individual. They haven't been able to succeed. Baghdadi hasn't been himself conquering all of these places. So while it's certainly an important issue that's worthy of discussion, and the tactic itself is worthy of discussion, trying to kill the leader of a dynamic organization like this, terror organization that wants to be a state, I think the more important issue is what is going to be done to eradicate the Islamic State's presence both in Syria and Iraq. And right now the discussion is uniquely focused on Iraq, and I think that's sort of unfair, and it's half the problem.
No, half the problem entirely. I think that's because most of us remember Iraq as the zone where all the problems, so to speak, began. But when you speak about the strategy and the killing of the one person, here's my question to you then. When we look at the Osama bin Laden situation, something that didn't really eradicate Al-Qaeda, it didn't, stop them from existing as an organization. But when we're missing the point here, other than, if you kill the number one, what should the Western powers take a look at? If they're trying to combat this,
the research is research is sort of mixed on targeted killings. An Israeli researcher, Avi Kober, showed that, killing political leaders it tends to be more effective than killing military leaders, but that raises the question, is Baghdadi the military leader or the political leader of the Islamic State? And I'm not even convinced that differentiation is really meaningful. Let's say in the case of Hezbollah, where Mousavi was killed and replaced by Nasrallah. He was a political leader. He was replaced by, in effect, a more effective political leader, Nasrallah, who hasn't seemed to back away from Hezbollah.
And was rising on the capital of the killing of Mousavi. Right. So that's the frightening thing about it. So, usually when we look at the Middle East, you go in, expecting apples and you get oranges, and that's the type of thing that people don't, when you try to combat it, they understand. Dr. Friedman, fascinating. Thank you for joining us. And when we get back, speaking of assassinations, Robert O'Neill, the Navy SEAL who killed bin Laden, reveals the arch-terrorist's final moments. So as Tony Grant said, should people kill and tell? We'll take a closer look. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. and welcome back. It is still Tuesday, November 11th, 2014. This is still the morning edition. Last I checked, I think I'm still Yael Levina. Thank you for staying with us. Our next topic. Not many people in the world can say, I killed Osama bin Laden, and he died afraid. Alliteration here. Former Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill claims to be the shooter, the one who killed Osama bin Laden. O'Neill, who was publicly named for the first time last week, said he does not care about people accusing him of lying about his role. Now, in the next 2 days, Fox will broadcast a two-part special, The Man Who Killed Osama bin Laden. Everybody in the bulk of the Western world, mostly the United States, is waiting for it, which they will give a first-hand account of the mission of bin Laden's final moments by the Navy SEAL who killed him, purportedly killed him. We're joined in studio by I-24 News senior news editor Ruthie Sinar. Ruthie, good morning to you.
Good morning, and I can confirm that you're Yael Levi.
Not yes. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't think Fox will let you do a 2-hour documentary about that fact, but last I checked. That said, let's look at O'Neill for a second because, you know, it's a day that I find interesting because there are conflicting reports about al-Baghdadi. You know, the head of them.
Is he dead or not?
Is he dead or not? Is he dead or not? You know, that, again, you know, the modus operandi of let's kill number one. I don't believe we have footage of O'Neill, but he was quoted in, we will a little bit later on, he was quoted in many places saying, I killed Osama bin Laden, he died like a pea, bleep, 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 bleep.
Right.
First of all, the reaction to this, but mostly in the United States are interesting to me. How are people reacting to this?
Well, you know, it's really interesting how people are basically so simple. All of us, not okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Everybody wants to be loved, and everybody wants to get the credit. And so we have this fellow, this O'Neill fellow, who's going around and saying, as we'll see in the Fox program, going around and saying, I shot him, I walked in the door, he was standing there, poof, poof, 2 shots to the forehead, and the guy died afraid. Then there are members of his team. It's this very secret team called the Navy, team number 6, Navy SEALs.
Navy SEAL.
Yeah, and members of.
It's like, I don't even want to say, you know, like the units in the Israeli army, but that's one of the highest, you know, the secretive.
Oh,
SEALs
absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a very, very elite unit.
Right.
There's 20-some members of the team,
right.
And apparently, from what you know, they've been saying, and they've been very upset about O'Neill taking the credit, and they outed him. His name was supposed to be kept a secret until the program aired.
How did this come out of him, actually? This came out by somebody outing him, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
And they wanted to kind of spoil the party before the Fox documentary aired. Another member of the team, by the way, last year, he also published a book, and there was also a piece in Vanity Fair, I believe, or Esquire last year, with another description from another member of the team.
And we have a recording of O'Neill discussing the moment Osama bin Laden was assassinated by the SEALs. Let's take a look.
One thing I tell him is, Osama bin Laden died like a p***. That's all I'm telling you. Just so you know, he died afraid, and you knew we were there to kill him. And that's a closure. Vets don't need closure. Vets need to sack up.
And this is his voice, and because O'Neill right now, he's actually a motivational speaker. In the United States.
Inspirational, yes.
Yeah, an inspirational, motivational speaker. And we're not making light of the situation, but you know what? I want to wonder out loud with you again, because I remember when Osama bin Laden was killed and the scenes from Times Square. People celebrating. It was a little bit reminiscent of Bush landing in the aircraft carrier saying mission accomplished.
Right.
You know, what is the actual capital of killing the number one of an organization?
Well, it's a big question because, you know, the conventional wisdom says, well, you know, it's really great, we get rid of the top honcho and then the whole thing will crumble. Fact is that it's not always true, and we know this from our experience here in Israel and the Middle East with Palestinian terror groups, that, you know, you kill the head, you know, you cut off the head of the snake, and then, you know, another snake, you know, rises to the occasion, as it were. So very unclear, certainly in the case of al-Baghdadi, there are many people poised to take over his job if it should turn out that he has in fact been killed. In the case of Osama bin Laden, I think it may have been more effective.
Really?
Al-Qaeda, to an extent. I mean, we don't really know of one. Al-Qaeda is kind of, from what I know, is kind of shattered a bit into various branches. And,
there's no main lead. I mean, Zawahiri is still in existence.
Right,
you know, and
right.
We're looking constantly at O'Neill in his motivational speaker role,
right?
Which is kind of frightening that this is becoming a almost. Because it's all over the news in the United States, in many places.
Well, the thing, it's kind of it's a story, it's a very human kind of story about, two people from a very elite unit vying for credit, basically, and whose is the real, who really pulled the last trigger. What O'Neill is now saying, it doesn't really matter, and it was a team effort, and, and it probably was. I mean, it probably took more than one shot to bring him down, and, they came into this building where he had been hiding in an attic, and they ran up the stairs, and did he poke his head out and get shot and then get shot again or not? I don't know. I mean, only people who were there know, obviously. And the question is, does it matter?
Yes, that's $1 million question to me. Does it matter who killed them? Why this being in the news? There's also this. I have to say, Bin Laden should have been killed. We can say that out loud, but when it comes to the Middle East and how these things are then portrayed for the people of the region,
right?
Then my feeling is always that they tend to forget in the Western media that this will raise more animosity.
Right. It's and it also has kind of this feeling of hangings in the town square. Everybody's out for blood and wow, and let's go to Times Square and celebrate and
yes, which was also because we're looking at the Middle East these days and it's all aflame, and clearly I think killing the head of the serpent doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to peace, democracy, and everything is fine.
Oh, no, obviously not. Yeah.
Clearly that's not working.
No.
Yes.
But anyway, it's always amazing to see how, basic human feelings, we tend to think of people and leaders and so on as being, sort of above the fray. And here you have these, incredibly brave SEALs who are just, fighting about, I shot him. No, I shot him. I'm the man. No, I'm the man.
No, I pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Ruthie, thank you so much.
Sure.
Do stay with us because we have some more interesting stuff to deal with women. Yes, coming up. And this is the time of day to be joined in studio by the woman who brings us the latest from the feminist field, or should I say the front. The feminist front, Karen Kirsch.
Women at the front.
Women at the front, I know. We did not pull the trigger.
Like us here.
Exactly. Yeah. And the one thing which you need to take a moment, pause, sit back and say, we have a studio right now, if we can have a long shot, please, of 3 women.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right? 3 women in the studio.
Once again.
We are
the
FF, the feminine front.
The feminine FF.
Like that.
Or it sounds like a porn movie in Germany. But is that true? Karen, what do you have for us today?
Well, today I'm actually bringing a story that we've covered in the social blog, which is one of the show that we're covering social issues in. And we did a whole show about motherhood in the modern age.
Good, very good.
And we did a story about 2 women who made different career choices, which we can identify with, I guess.
Very much. I'm very happy to take a look at this report and see maybe they've cracked open, the enigma that I'm yet to solve. Let's take a look.
My name is Adi Oz.
My name is Lauren Ben Shoshan.
I'm 38 years old.
33 years old.
I'm editor-in-chief at magazine. I have 2 sons.
I have 4 children, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. I chose to stay at home as opposed to have a career. It was a choice that I did not make lightly, but at the same time, I think it was the right choice for me and for our family.
The 1980s brought the highest growth rate in working mothers in the USA in the past 150 years. But in the past decade, there's a new interesting trend. Today, according to the Pew Research Center, moms both work more hours and they also spend more hours a week with their children. Sounds impossible, but this is symbolic of how complicated motherhood has become. The pressure of both having a successful career, not just any job, while being a supermom is greater than ever before.
Any mother who works understands this situation. It requires you to integrate the 2 worlds.
Whether working towards a successful career or excelling at motherhood, women today seem more stressed, guilty, and frustrated than ever before.
The times when I feel deeply guilty are when I suddenly get pissed off at them, my children, because of stresses that I'm carrying from work. Or if because of work I feel really tired or don't have energy for them. The times when I'm with them, but not really with them because of work, that's when I feel really terrible with myself. It's hard to accept. If a woman wants to advance in her career, she can't say, I work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and I'm not interested in working more. It requires you to work late at night, to multitask, to be at a playground and be able to answer emails or calls, or the work becomes dominant and integrated into your life.
And here's some more interesting statistics. According to the Pew Research Center, stay-at-home mothers have risen to 29% in 2012, up from a modern-era low of 23% in 1999. That's right, for whatever reason, economic or ideological, today more mothers are staying at home. Mothers like Lauren, who holds a master's degree but still has made the choice not to work.
There's a lot of physical and emotional things that are very hard about becoming a mother, and there are certain intellectual challenges, but not at the level that most college-educated women are used to. So then the question is, how do you create opportunities for yourself within the structure that you have? So when you stay at home, you have to spend time in self-development. You have to be motivated, and just so you don't go crazy. And the more fun it is, the more you enjoy it. So you have to, there's the possibility to never have a conversation all day long. I mean, that's just a reality. I think we would have a lot more stress in our lives. I think we would be a lot less happy if I had chosen differently.
It remains to be seen if and how the complicated reality of motherhood today will change for future generations.
Great piece, Karen Kirsch, I have to say. The million-dollar question, which seems to be coming up again and again, should women stay at home? A number that I found really, really bizarre there is that the number of stay-at-home moms has risen.
Yes.
Why?
Well, that actually has a lot of good explanations, I guess quite sad ones. Especially, this is an American statistic, but it's accurate in most of capitalist
the Western
places.
society.
Yes, yeah. It's more economical to stay at home in the situation where women earn less than men, right. And when you sort of calculate what it means to go and get. You usually, a lot of women find themselves working to cover the daycare of the child.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
Yeah. I know. You know that. Yeah, very
yes,
well.
I do. I do know.
Yes.
And so when you take that into account, you sometimes decide maybe it's good for I'll take a break.
Yeah.
The tragedies that break sometimes mean I've been
Most
driven
of the times,
out
I have
of
to
them.
say, I think that if we're at a situation with the great story the story you brought us several weeks ago about Apple offering women to freeze their eggs, then clearly it's already out there in the open that companies prefer you do not take the maternity leave.
Of course, and because they understand that there is an amazing statistic about the dropout rate of women from high tech, which reaches about more than 50%. At around the ages of maternity. Right. And women tend to, we spoke about that in the social blog, women tend to reinvent themselves and have these sort of jobs from home. Sometimes it's really nice careers, but they're very different.
I think those are the anomalies. I think that it doesn't go across the board. I think if you choose to stay home and if you choose to have two children one after the other, at the end of the day, you're going to end up spending 3 to 4 years at home and 3 to 4 years out of the out of the workplace.
Yeah.
Takes a dent, especially in high tech where things constantly change.
Yes, and another sort of sad thing is that the women who can afford to drop out of work and still, like the woman we saw here, kind of provide themselves with something and talk about, getting themselves occupied and thinking and stuff, are the women who can afford it. And
can
the
do-
women,
exactly.
yeah, and so it's something that sort of drives the inequality even further, and we're actually seeing interesting statistics that richer and more educated women have more kids now.
Because they can afford it.
Poorer women.
Than poor women who have to go out there and work. But also, if it's a decision that you do want to go out and work because it's part of your DNA, not just because you have to, then
you find yourself in the circle of guilt.
Yeah, exactly. That I wanted to ask. The circle of guilt is very true. Especially if you're a Jewish woman, then you're double guilted. But
although somebody told me, you never use the phrase guilt. It's not guilt. You can say you're sad. You can say it's difficult. You're not guilty. You're not guilty to go and work.
Oh, come on, it's guilt. You feel guilty because society has double standards for women. But fascinating stuff. And as you said, we have to remind people that there are women who do not have the choice, who have to be also out there working and have the children. And equality-wise, I don't know. You made me sad, but at least we're raising the issues. Karen Kirsch, thank you for being with us this morning. Always a pleasure to have you. When we get back, Matt Damon's not sad. He confirmed he's reprising his role as Jason Bourne. Yes, breaking news on that front. First, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Thank you for staying with us. I-24 News, November 10th, where I am joined...
November 11th.
November 11th, my lord. Yes! That was written on my script.
I'm your numbers guy. So.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I'm here with Tony Grant and his wife.
Bonjour.
Who, will give us all the film news a little bit later on. But Tony, you're here with the viral spiral that is the web review.
Yes. Well, and it is actually viral because we're talking about Ebola and the British. This is interesting.
I usually lump those together,
yes.
Ebola and the British.
This is where pop culture and science collide. It's been reported that Bob Geldof from Do They Know It's Christmas fame, Band-Aid, is creating a fourth version of the very famous best-selling 1984 single to Do They Know It's Christmas Time at All?
We're all looking to see a
Yes, we are.
I'm not even paying attention.
Bono's back. He's going to be part of the mix.
Bono's back.
I'm going to let that one
go. Was Jackson in it? Was Michael Jackson in it?
No, that was the We Are the World.
That's We Are the World, exactly.
Which was paled in comparison.
In comparison to Do They Know It's Christmas. This was the first, big... stars get together.
You had George Michael, you had Simon Le Bon, you had Boy George, you had George Michael, you had Simon Le Bon.
And Boy George.
You had Paul Young.
Boy George.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, it was a...
You think they're going to get all of them again?
No, they're going to get Sinead O'Connor. They're going to get Bono. They're going to get One Direction, which...
One Direction I know because I have nieces.
Yeah, they tore up the European, the MTV EMAs. They won a lot of stuff, but they're still,
They're not the Beatles.
Yeah,
they're
not
the Beatles. Do you know One Direction?
Yeah, I know. I don't know their music, though.
No,
I feel like everyone knows the name, but not really the music.
I have a niece who walks around tattoos
as you did
them.
earlier in the show, the music.
The music, yes. I'm going to have to do that.
But Sinead O'Connor will keep it interesting.
Yes, I'm wondering if she's going to... Well, first of all, is she still bald?
She is.
She's
so
still
she and I have a lot more in common these days than back in the day.
Was it Nothing Compares?
Nothing Compares to You, which was written, of course, by Prince.
Oh, that's why there's all those little high notes.
How did you not know that?
No, kind of. Wow. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it also Nothing Compares to You with the.
You are right. How did I not know?
Yeah.
You know what? Shut up. You did not see The Princess Bride. There are things.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
But Quincy Jones will be producing the American version of the song. So this is going to be a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah. So good news on that
Geldof,
front.
a man who I always want to shower when I look at him, right?
Yeah. Well, he's been through some rough times this year. So I think.
I know that's very true. He just lost his daughter and the wife.
But this is going to be a great thing. Dennis Rodman back in the headlines because recently on Saturday, Kenneth Bay and Matthew Miller, the Americans that were released from North Korean jail, Dennis Rodman is basically claiming that it's because of him that they got sprung from the.
He's such good friends
with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah,
exactly. He had this letter that he apparently he wrote to Kim earlier in the year, and he showed it to TMZ, and he's basically giving
I
yourself a lot
gotta
of
say,
credit.
listen, Obama sends a letter to Khamenei in Iran, and that doesn't work. Maybe we should get Dennis Rodman into the mix. Maybe he should start sending letters.
It's like the International Pen Pal Society. Yeah.
Yes, have Dennis Rodman solve the world's issues.
You know, Dennis Rodman once, for a brief time, went out with Madonna.
I remember that.
Yes.
You weren't born.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like Madonna went kind of with everyone before I was.
Well,
when she was interesting, yes.
Her jacket is interesting. It fetched $252,000 at auction. The one from Desperately Seeking Susan. Yes, 1985's hit film. The best that she was ever in, some say.
Yes, I have to tell you, I so get it. If I had the money, I would have paid the money because as a girl, all I wanted was the Madonna jacket from Desperately Seeking Susan.
You can make it though.
True.
Just bring a picture and somewhere, yeah.
You know, there was an Egyptian tie into that jacket because there was a pyramid on the back. In the very last scene, she goes to Egypt with Rosanna Arquette.
Yes.
Yes. Film for the ages.
I know.
Her wedding dress that she married Sean Penn in fetched $81,000, $81,250 at the auction.
That's ridiculous.
I'd rather have the jacket.
Yeah, I'd rather have the jacket.
Yeah.
Because the wedding dress also just seems to be jinxed.
Yeah. Sean is still her favorite when you ask her.
She's still her favorite?
Her favorite amour.
Amour.
Past amour.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one likes Sean.
No one liked Sean. I remember the famous brawls and the.
Yeah, before there was other famous brawls like Russell Crowe, who we'll get to later. Yeah. Cranberries crooner Dolores O'Riordan had an air rage incident aboard an Aer Lingus flight yesterday. I guess it was from JFK to lovely Ireland. She fractured an air hostess's foot. Apparently, she head-butted an officer following the flight. She was been released now from custody there in Ireland. But
I love her.
You know, I was wondering, she's been so quiet lately.
Very quiet.
She made up for that yesterday. Yeah.
What did she do? She hit him? She bit him?
She basically went postal on a flight attendant for reasons that are as yet undisclosed.
Undisclosed.
Maybe the air stewardess didn't recognize who she was, and I don't know. I mean, you never hear much about the Cranberries. They were a great band in the 90s.
I'm such a fool for you. That's the Cranberries.
I was just thinking about zombie, you know.
Zombie?
It's more
Did she?
Wrapping around my finger, but zombie is more.
Linger.
Well, she came out as a zombie, actually.
Yes, tune into the morning edition where we sing.
Yes, from Sinead to Dolores. It's all about Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah. Actually, unless you're in Florida. Because there was some big wedding news on Saturday in Palm Beach. The son of Donald Trump, Eric, got hitched to Lara Yunaska, TV producer. There they are. There's the happy couple with the dog.
Oh my God, she's a TV producer.
Yeah, Inside Edition.
Huh.
Yeah, and he looks like a white vampire. Now,
he does. I didn't want to.
Yes, it is really scary, frightening.
It is slightly
I saw the
creepy.
picture. I was instantly
He's
terrified.
the son of Trump and
Ivana.
Ivana.
Yes.
He looks like Ivana.
He looks.
He's Ivanish, but to the he's a little bit. He's something out of Twilight.
Yeah, and his hair is going in the direction of his father pretty fast
He
there
does
too.
look like a. She's got the expression of help me.
It's like.
But he's got the money.
Look for the dog that has this
Yeah, the dog
expression.
is, I did not agree to any of this.
Yeah,
They
that
forced
little
me to
puppy.
be here.
Yes, we are never staying in the Trump Tower. You know that.
Yeah,
We're
beautiful
bored.
Mar-a-Lago there.
Yes.
Now, speaking of Florida, scientists have discovered a virus that makes you stupid. Now, I gotta tell you, it was actually it's the algae virus, which doesn't impair cognitive function. It was actually not a University of Florida study. It was actually University of Nebraska and Johns Hopkins. So watch out for those algae microbes.
Microbes. Okay. I can't speak. Once again, Tony Grant ruins my makeup, and it's a virus that everybody in Florida got.
No, everyone in America is susceptible to this thing, apparently. Yeah. It begins in Washington, D.C. and fans out across the land. Yeah, be wary because it's scary.
Okay, yes.
Do I have time for Miss Piggy?
Miss Piggy, quickly.
Yes.
Miley Cyrus is painting her pig's toenails, and it's causing a flap because people are saying, "Hey, is this against animal rights?" Bubba Sue is the pig's name. Miley Cyrus is the pop star's name, and and people are thinking
Whose
that
fingernails are those? Just kidding.
yes, and that shade of pink just doesn't go with that
That's just
pig.
anything. I know.
Yeah.
Not only that, the headline here is Miley Cyrus has pigs.
And she's that little.
Why do you have pigs?
Yeah, she's a country
George
girl.
Clooney had pigs.
No, true.
Did he?
Yeah, you
did,
remember
yeah,
the little
very,
pig? He
very
had a very cute one. I don't know what
maybe
happened
they're
to
cousins.
He died. I read about that. He died a few years ago.
He
There was a
became
funeral.
bacon.
How old does a pig live for?
Oh, years.
Years. Yeah, for years he died. There was a funeral. This is great breaking news. But I don't know. I see that, and I like my pigs in a frying pan.
Pigs in a blanket.
Yeah, pigs in a blanket. There you go.
I don't like to kill animals.
No, you're right.
No,
we're
This
horrible
is-
people. Tony
Even
and I
pigs,
are not.
they're cute.
They're
very
adorable,
cute.
and they're
very
smart.
cute.
Yeah.
And we're going to move to the one and only Leticia Orni with the film news.
Yes.
Yes.
Interstellar. Everyone is talking about Interstellar.
I read horrible reviews.
And I read amazing reviews.
So they're mixed?
It actually is exactly what I want to talk about, is this mixed reviews for a Christopher Nolan movie. We expected it, of course. Like Inception was, his previous movie was exactly the same story. Complicated story, complicated plot, complicated narrative. And
very much so.
You have
and everybody's waiting for Interstellar.
Everyone is waiting for it. Everyone is waiting for it because it is still absolutely giant. Every time a movie of Christopher Nolan is coming out, you expect the science. You expect what I was talking to you about last week before the movie came out. You expect something big, and it is a huge movie, and it's a movie that not everyone understands, and it's of course a movie that you're gonna have to watch over and over to understand the layers. It's like almost 3 hours if it's not maybe even more. But so what's going on right now is that so we're talking about good reviews, bad reviews, but we're also talking about the accuracy of the science in the movie, which is the interesting stuff, because even if you don't like the movie, you can still kind of like get interested in that science aspect of it. So
but I hear
right
that
now,
a lot of scientists are quite upset. I think it's about a black hole somewhere.
Black holes traveling through,
Florida.
Traveling through time. Actually, there's this very famous astrophysicist called Neil deGrasse Tyson, American astrophysicist, that is tweeting right now what's real and what's accurate
and what's
not accurate. He's basically pro Christopher Nolan. There's a pro in
the pro
so he's the pro. He says that the experience of Einstein's relativity of time as no other feature film has been shown like this. So relativity, gravity, quantum, electrodynamics, evolution, each of these theories is true whether or not you believe in them, and it's portrayed in the movie. Nolan is saying, Christopher Nolan is saying on Twitter that people tweet things like after seeing the movie only once, which is kind of usually what you do. You go see a movie
You're not gonna, you can tweet once. You're not going to say like, okay, a week later at lunch, let me tweet this about Interstellar.
But he says that to really take on the science of the film, you have to read you have to sit down and watch the film carefully, and also read tips from Kip's book. Kip's who's the
actual writer of the novel that it's based on, right?
He was also the
co-writer. He wrote
the co-writer, and on set he was the science consultant. Exactly, that was the word I was looking for. So Interstellar, yes, no, you like it, you don't like it.
I
Still
read a headline that I loved. It was like Interstellar. I don't remember if it was the Huffington Post or something. Interstellar is long, ridiculous, and loads of fun. Which I'm always part. I mean, if it's long and ridiculous, okay. But as long as they say that the effects are brilliant and whatnot.
Well, FX brilliant, amazing casting, still an amazing scientific story.
Exactly.
You just enjoy the ride, and it's Christopher Nolan.
Bingo. Okay.
It's so that's for Interstellar. What else? It's today. You said it. I mean, you didn't say it. You said it. It's the 11th of November.
Yes. I know. I skipped the day.
So it's Armistice Day, first, the end of the Great War, and actually Russell Crowe took this reason to become a director himself.
Oh Lord!
Why? He's making a movie called Water Diviner, and he's starring in the movie also. He's starring as an Australian man that is going to go to Turkey to search for his two sons who were missing after the Battle of Gallipoli in 1919.
Right.
Let's watch a little bit
of
that.
the thing. Okay.
So he's alive?
I don't know.
But you hope?
Hope's a necessity where I come from.
The camps are gone. Go home, Mr. Connor.
Nobody will tell me what prison camp they sent Arthur to. I will ride with you. I promised their mother I would find them and bring them home.
I measure a man by how much he loves his children, not by what the world has done to them.
You know what? I mean, you just said that it looks good,
Yeah.
which is interesting, because I mean, I always have a problem, and Tony will agree with me. Ever since Yentl,
Papa, can you hear me?
Papa, when an actor decides to direct himself, it's always worrisome.
Well, a lot of them are doing it. Actually, he's kind of like on the path of Mel Gibson and
Kevin Costner.
And Kevin Costner actually made a great movie.
Great movie. True. I mean, I think Barbara Streisand just scarred me because I like her so much. But
speaking of battle scars, did Mel Gibson pave the way for this film? Because
Yes.
we talk about Gallipoli, Peter Weir's 1981 film, in which, of course, about this horrific battle of World War I, and Australia's huge role in this battle.
Well, no, it's the war that we don't know much about.
Actually, Gallipoli, this movie, the Peter Weir movie, is one of the. It's the top 20 movie of Australia. In Australia, it's really, really big, and it is something that we don't really know about. We don't really treat in American cinema usually. So it's good for Russell Crowe to get an insight
to get into that, and his name will also make a larger audience come and see it, as opposed to because I always feel that within the United States they've rehashed, and again it's an interesting theme with the Second World War, but to the point of that there's no other history in many ways in Hollywood. Sadly, all the time we have, folks. I love you dearly. As we said, Tony, Leticia, my favorite couple, and of course, do not forget to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be to start your day every single day. So you should tune in tomorrow morning as well.